there, spoiler phobes! You have stumbled into A Storm of Spoilers, a Star Wars special where we are covering the second season of the Disney Plus streaming series Andor in 4 chunks, just like they dropped on that streaming service. This week, we are focusing on episodes 10, 11, and 12, the conclusion of Andor, but discussion can include content from the Star Wars movies, Star Wars TV shows, Star Wars novels, Star Wars comics, and video games, maybe. You know, the Star Wars universe. No Storm section this week, as this is the end of the series. We are not ruining, we're enriching, and we're taking down the Empire. Why, hello again. I'm Dave Gonzalez, and please make it stop.
And I'm Neil Miller, and I think we used up all the perfect.
And welcome back to A Storm of Spoilers. Updates on what you could find on this feed, since we are technically done with our Andor deep dives, but we are far from done with Andor. Next week on the 16th, we're going to do an Andor wrap-up episode, and we're going to give awards to our favorite things. We're going to call out some things about Andor the series and talk about how it fits into Star Wars. And then after that, we're going to have one more brand new Star Wars special for you in July. So make sure to drop by Wednesdays, either in your podcast feed or up on YouTube. You could contact the show by emailing us at stormofspoilers@gmail.com. We would also hope you can review us on iTunes in that iTunes podcast app or on Spotify. Leave us a 5-star review, leave us a comment, say some nice things, or whatever you want if it's 5 stars, honestly. We like the stars.
Mm-hmm.
We have no new reviews this week, so if you could jump in, that would be great. You could also watch us on the old YouTube at youtube.com/@DaveandNeil. That's DA7EANDNEIL. That is also...
Sure. I believe you're supposed to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. And if you leave a comment, that is helpful. This is what I'm learning about the YouTube algo.
Yeah, just engage wherever you want with Storm of Spoilers, however you want.
Hit all the little buttons.
All of them. Just keep clicking. If you want more of Neil and I in general, we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/DA7EANDNEIL. There you get not only just access to the bonus content for however long we've had the Patreon. So since we've been doing Storm of Spoilers, since we did the Lost Rewatch series, since Neil and I rewatched Twin Peaks, since we both watched The Leftovers for the first time, and now our Eat the Root Hannibal rewatch, you will get access to a bunch of podcasts at a bunch of different levels. Head over to patreon.com/DaveandNeil to check it out. All right, now I think is the time to conclude our trivia before we dive into Andor. This episode of Storm of Spoilers is brought to you by Indivisible. If you attended the No Kings protests a few weeks ago, you probably saw signs referencing Andor. I saw a lot of people carrying "I have friends everywhere" signs, and Tony Gilroy made no secret about his participation in the protests in New York.
Andor might be taking place in a galaxy far, far away, but the connections to what's happening in this country are inescapable. We're seeing a steady march by a tyrannical regime against our communities and our rights. They hide behind countless atrocities, but we know oppression is the mask of fear. They know there are more of us, and regular people are already rising up with acts big and small to defend their neighbors and what remains of our aspiring democracy. One organization that's helping people throughout the country enlist in the cause is Indivisible. They are the primary group behind the No Kings protest and a daily source of actions people can take to overcome this fascist onslaught.
Indivisible has grassroots groups working day in and day out in every corner of the country to protect our rights and find meaningful ways to defy the Trump regime. Visit their website at indivisible.org to get connected, join a local group, or enroll in their trainings on strategic defiance to fight authoritarianism. You can also sign up at indivisible.org/friends everywhere for more info.
This is where the comeback is complete.
Yeah, here's how it's going to work, Neil. We are going to try to get you to beat me and the guests and everybody Neil Ascendant this week. Here's how I'm going to help you out. Let's remind everybody. After Joanna, the score was 35-27. Guests were leading you by 8 points.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had Adam Lance Garcia come on, and I accidentally invited the person who maybe knew the most about Star Wars on third and had to freestyle this finale. But after that, the score was guess 58, Neil 43. So we were down 15 points.
Which, given Adam's clear advantage in depth of knowledge of the Star Wars canon, non-canon, literally everything, I don't feel so bad about that.
So here is how I'm going to try to help you out, Neil. You are down 15 points on the guests.
Sure.
This week, I have figured out a way for you to compete against yourself in 13 rounds comprising of 35 questions.
The greatest enemy of all, yourself.
So there's 35 questions. And here's how I'm going to start you off. This is not part of the 35 questions, but this is what I'm calling the feel-good Neil multiplier.
Oh, boy.
If you answer this question correctly, I will multiply your complete score from today by 2 to help you cover this 15-point gap.
Okay.
Which gives you a lot of time to get things wrong. If you don't get this multiplier question correct, nothing happens. You just have to answer at least 16 questions correctly.
Okay.
So here we go. Multiplier question. Neil, as you may know, I've been playing a mobile game called Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes for a little over 10 years now.
Sure.
Actually, I know I played this game because we talk about it sometimes on our Patreon podcast, David Neil's Pop Culture Adventure. The last time we talked about the game, I mentioned I was going to switch to farm this legendary character from the prequel trilogy, who looks to be pretty good in the active Order 66 raid, which is ironic because this character was not, to the best of our canon knowledge, at the Jedi Temple during Anakin's slaughter of the Jedi. What character am I farming to earn?
Oh my God. It's a general of some kind. Right? General? Or is it a Grand Moff? It's an empirical character, I believe.
Interesting.
Oh no, this is terrible. Oh God, why?
If you don't get it right, you have to answer 16 questions. If you do get it right, you just have to answer 8 questions.
I mean, this does not portend good things for the rest of this little trivia section here, because I, for the life of me, cannot remember, and I swear we talked about it like a week ago.
We did.
I'm just going to guess Grand Moff Tarkin, but I think that's wrong.
That is very close because Grand Moff Tarkin is very useful with his requirements, but I am farming for Jedi Master Mace Windu.
God damn it. Purple lightsaber.
Purple lightsaber. All right, Neil. Here is how you're going to have to beat yourself. These 35 questions are the 35 questions you got incorrect in the previous rounds of Star Wars. So you have heard the answers to these questions before and maybe feel guilty about not knowing some of them, but you need to get 16 of these right in order to beat the guests / me. I couldn't put my hand in this one basically at all because all of it had already happened. Wow. So let's begin with our first group of 3 questions. Category 1 was name that droid, where I will describe a droid. You have to name that droid. Neil, J.J. Abrams voiced this droid that didn't like to be touched.
Oh, that's Dio.
That is Dio.
All right. Okay.
See, 15, 1 down. 1. You just need 15 more points.
Got it.
David Tennant voiced this character in animation before voicing the droid in Ahsoka.
Oh, what's that guy's name? I can see him. I can see his face. And it's not Chopper. It's the other guy. I don't know that guy's name.
That is Hu Yang.
Hu Yang. Damn it. All right. I know what Hu Yang looks like. I just can never remember his name.
Yeah. And so then I'm going to give you one that Joanna got wrong because the third question you got wrong in this category was like way too hard. It was like a droid character AP5 you had never seen before. Sure. But you are aware of this little guy. So what is Cal Kestis's droid companion's name in the Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor video games?
Oh, no. That one's not like BB9, is it?
Oh, it's very close. It is BD1.
Damn it.
You got 1 point, though.
All right.
So we are now technically at minus 14. I guess if you get to 0, that's a tie. So sure. we're okay going into that. All right. Here we go. The next category you might recall is name that lightsaber. So Neil, you got this lightsaber wrong. I described it as a blue lightsaber that has both silver and black on its hilt and has some of that ribbing that Luke Skywalker's has, but this is not Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. Neil, whose lightsaber is this?
Isn't this Anakin Skywalker's?
This is General Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber.
This is deeply embarrassing.
Neil. Let's see if we could move on here.
I don't think people appreciate how difficult it is to prepare for trivia quizzes like this.
I mean, these you've already seen before. So here's the next one. I called this one a red bladed lightsaber that had a curved hilt.
Oh, this is the dude from Ahsoka, right? Isn't this Baylan Skoll?
It is not Baylan Skoll.
No, it's not, because he's a Jedi. Well, he's like a middle of the road kind of dude.
Yeah, his is like orange, which is pretty cool, but not this.
Whose is this? I don't know.
This is Count Dooku.
Son of a bitch.
And finally, this green-bladed lightsaber has mostly black ribbing on its hilt and a big red button. This was one of the sources of one of our YouTube comments on our very first video.
Wait. Is this one Luke's from Return of the Jedi?
No, this is Qui-Gon Jinn.
Oh my god.
No, still not great in the lightsaber category, Neil. I'm sorry.
I just think maybe my brain is broken. Maybe my brain is so broken it can't remember things from 3 weeks ago.
That is very possible, Neil. Here is the women of Star Wars. So this is where I give you
some of my favorites.
I give you the project, and you tell me the woman with the top billing.
Okay.
And this was, again, back when I was taking it way too hard on you.
The actor or the character?
The act. I will give you...
You'll take either?
I'll take either for this round. Okay. I'm really trying to help you out, man.
I get the pity rule, either.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Star Wars Outlaws.
Star Wars Outlaws is Kay Vess.
That is the character name, so I'll give you a credit there.
Yeah.
What is the actress's name?
Shit, I don't know who the voice actor is.
This was Humberly Gonzalez.
Okay.
That's cool. You're at negative 13 points. We're going good. Star Wars Battlefront 2 story mode.
Oh, I can see her face too. Oh, what's that actress's name? Isn't it Janina something? Janina, it starts with a G. Her last name starts with a G.
I mean, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
It's Janina Gavankar.
Yes, that's right. I knew it. See?
All right.
I knew most of it. I knew 65% of her name.
And then Star Wars Tales of the Jedi.
Star Wars Tales of the Jedi. That's not an Ahsoka.
That is an Ahsoka one. Did you?
Which would make it Rosario Dawson.
No, this is the voice actress who originated Ahsoka.
Who originated Ahsoka?
She's got a clothing line now. Geeky stuff. Con personality.
A con personality who has a clothing line.
I don't think we've met her at any cons, though. She's been around. This is Ashley Eckstein.
Ashley Eckstein. Okay. I've never met Ashley Eckstein.
All right. So you're at negative 11.
Okay. We're moving.
Two questions here.
Okay.
This is from live action or animated. Did this character appear first in animated form or live action form? Question number 1, Count Dooku.
I believe this one is animated.
This one is live action.
Son of a bitch.
Question number 2.
I should know more about Count Dooku. I really should.
You really should. Aura Singh.
Aura Singh.
Live action or animated?
Who the hell is Aura Singh?
She is a bounty hunter. They called her Boba Fett in the concept art. It was the fun fact I had about her when the Joanna episode happened.
I'm going to guess live action.
Live action is correct.
Is it a Mandalorian thing?
As she's in the Star Wars Phantom Menace, she could be seen at the pod race.
Oh, okay.
So that means we're on to our 5th of 13 categories, and you are at negative 10. We're moving right along.
Got it.
Digging our way back towards the surface.
Crawling out of the Sarlacc pit.
Yep. This one apparently was a very unfair category. This is space commodities, Neil. So here we go. This planet, used during the Galactic Republic era as the Jedi as a source of kyber crystals, was later strip-mined into Starkiller Base by the First Order.
It's not Jeddah. It's the other one.
Yes.
Now the question is, what the hell is the other one's name? Lothal. Is it? No. Yes? No, it's not. No, I got nothing. I can't come up with it.
This is Ilum once again.
Ilum. Got it.
Yeah.
I'm never going to remember that one.
All right. Another space commodity. What is the name of the hyperdrive fuel that Disney created in Star Wars that is featured in multiple places like Solo: A Star Wars Story and the Smuggler's Run ride at the theme parks?
Oh, no. Oh, fuck. Why don't I know this? I mean, because it's stupid knowledge.
How dare you, sir? This is perfectly cromulent knowledge.
I have no idea.
This is coaxium.
Coaxium. Right.
All right, last one in the space commodities category. This green and toxic fuel is a byproduct of spice mining on the planet Kessel. You know, the Kessel Run Kessel. We saw in Solo. I always imagine it smells like gas because it makes toxic clouds when used by machinery.
I can't even think of a silly name for this one.
Neil, that is gas-like from Kessel. That is Kesseline.
Gasoline. I was going to guess Caecilium.
No. All right. So, still at negative 10. We are going into Since We Last Quote. So, these are quotes from Star Wars projects that came out after we put out our sequel Storm of Spoilers Star Wars special on December 11th, 2019.
Got it.
There are only 3 points available here because some of these things you have guessed at. So I'm going to give you a chance to fill in the other half of the point. So you correctly identified the actor Carl Weathers as saying, "Come on, baby, do the magic hand thing." But you did not know his character name. For 1 point, what was his character name?
It's Grief Karga.
That is Grief Karga.
That's right. Now I remember.
Positive learning. All right. You identified, or I think the team might have identified, if I had to lose a lot of myself to become a Jedi, even if I didn't know it at the time. I had to lose a lot of myself to become a Jedi, even if I didn't know it at the time. You, I think, correctly got Amandla Steinberg. I'm going to say, could you name either of the twins she plays in The Acolyte?
Yeah, one of them's May. The other one's Osha?
Yeah, those are both right. I'll give you points for both of those. We're down to negative 7. All right, Neil. You knew Timothy Oliphant played a character and that we hadn't seen him in a long time. What's that character's name?
It's been 1,347 days since we've seen Cobb Vanth.
Cobb Vanth. That sounds like what you were expecting for some reason.
I just, it's hard to forget Cobb Vanth.
All right, that brings you to negative 6 points.
Oh,
so
we're getting close.
We're getting there.
The tension is mounting.
It says you have 15 more questions to get back up there.
This is going to be embarrassing if I don't get it.
This is from It's Gonna Be May. What movie was also in theaters May 1983 and played against Return of the Jedi? Is this Blue Thunder, Flashdance, or Jaws 3D?
In fairness, this is too early in the year for me to have even been born in 1983 at this point. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was Flashdance.
It was Blue Thunder.
Son of a bitch.
Got him. All right. This next
Did Flashdance at least come out in 1983?
Yes, these all
Just
came out in
later in the
1983.
year?
Flashdance came out in April, so it was very close.
That is playing dirty. as a quizmaster.
Yeah, well, that's how it goes. I don't know how dirty it is considering you have been told the answer to all of these questions. This one, as a matter of fact, you've been told 2 answers, one of which was incorrect. And so now let's see if we get the correct one. What movie was also in theaters May 2002 and played against Attack of the Clones? Was it John Q, Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams, or Spider-Man?
Oh, it was Spider-Man because that was the wrong one. Was
13th Warrior.
13th Warrior. Yeah, okay. I remember. We got a whole email about that.
We did. So with -5, question 22. What movie was also in theaters May 2005 and played against Revenge of the Sith? Would this be Diary of a Mad Black Woman, Crash, or Corpse Bride?
I think it was Crash.
It was Crash.
Because I remember we were like, the more traditional wisdom would be that Crash would come out in the fall. So it was surprising that it came out that early in the year.
It was.
But I guess maybe it was a TIFF movie from the previous year.
All right, so you're down 4 points. This one Joanna yelled at me for. The planet of Bespin is in what sector?
I don't know.
The Anowat sector. All right.
Got it.
This one, Java was very happy that she got correct when she listened to the podcast, but you got wrong. So in Empire Strikes Back, who arrives at Cloud City first? Leia and Lando on the Falcon, Luke, or Darth Vader?
It's not Luke.
Correct. That's what you answered the last time.
Right. I think it's Vader.
It is Darth Vader.
Yeah. He's waiting for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Secretly. All right. -3 points. Question 25. What was the name of the mobile game that told the story of an uprising against the Imperial's iron blockade that was attempting to conceal the news of the second Death Star's destruction and the Emperor's apparent death?
Well, I know it's not Galaxy of Heroes.
That was your guess last time.
But, oh, man. No, I lost it. It's in there somewhere, and I was grabbing for it, but it's gone.
This would be Star Wars Uprising.
I should have just guessed.
All right, you are down 3 points. You have, I think, I don't know, slightly under 10 questions to go. 9, let's say. Here are the 2 you got wrong from I Have a Bad Feeling About This with Adam Lance Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
This character had a bad feeling early on in Revenge of the Sith while piloting a starfighter into the hangar of the Invisible Hand.
This is Obi-Wan?
This is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That's right. This time I at least remember that the Invisible Hand is Dooku's ship, and it was Obi-Wan and Anakin that went to the ship, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. So at least I knew who was there.
Or it might have been Grievous's ship, but Dooku was there. It's fine either way.
Sure, yeah. That's where they face off with Dooku on the bridge.
Yeah. This character has a bad feeling in Rise of Skywalker when the First Order lands on Pisana, where I guess they lived from 28 to 34 ABY.
Oh, yeah, this is Lando Calrissian.
This is Lando Calrissian.
And all about his time in Pisana now.
All right, well, good, because our next category is dominant biome planets. It doesn't include Pisana, but does include some questions. You're only at -1. This could be the one where you start.
Redemption is
yourself.
at hand, friends.
This ocean planet was famous for producing the clone army of the Republic. The rainy one, you called it.
Yeah. What was it? What was it actually called, though? I don't know. Why can't I remember this one?
Camino.
Camino. God. Just like the car or the Breaking Bad sequel movie.
The El Camino. Yeah, that's correct. I haven't thought about that since it came out. All right, Neil, this planet is where spice is primarily mined.
I mean, did I guess Kessel last time?
You did not guess Kessel last time.
Well, isn't it Kessel?
It is Kessel. Neil is even. And what a question for you to maybe pull ahead here, Neil. This is the planet where young Jedi used to get their first Kyber crystal until the sequel trilogy. We just talked about it.
Is Jeddah.
No, it's Ilum. God damn it.
I told you I wasn't going to remember Ilum.
I know.
Ever. In fact, I think it's a
be
deliberate thing at this point. I'm just
still
flushing
all tied. You could have pulled ahead with Ilum, and finally it would have been like an arc of Neil over 4 weeks remembering Ilum. I'm making you watch this episode of the Clone Wars. God damn it. All right.
Got it.
Final biome question. Maz Kanata's castle is on this jungle planet.
Oh, no. Is it Takodana?
It is Takodana. Neil, +1. All right. These last questions, we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These last 6 questions are just all in the green, bud.
All right.
You're doing it. Or in the black if we're talking capitalism.
Sure.
This is a canon or not canon animation. You just have to tell me whether or not this is animated canon. Yeah. Lop and Ocho live on the planet Tau and try to escape Imperial rule.
I think this is canon.
This is not canon from Star Wars Visions.
Star Wars Visions isn't canon?
This story is not canon.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Some of Star Wars Visions is canon.
And Star Wars Visions is technically under the Legends tag as far as like what they've said when they've released it, but some people have claimed that it's not, and you know how the Disney lines fuzz around occasionally, especially for international productions. Anyway, the Monolith 10, a group of 10 advanced recon commando clone troopers, ARC troopers, secure members of the Intergalactic Banking Clan.
I'm going to say this is canon.
This is not canon from the 2003 Tartakovsky animated Clone Wars.
Okay, got it. That's not canon either. Great. This is what I get for not watching any of the Star Wars cartoons.
All right. This penultimate category is betrayal. There are 2 questions. These are about people who've switched sides.
Got it.
This character started as an apprentice of Count Dooku, but is definitely good now as of the Bad Batch and Star Wars Tales of the Underworld.
Oh, why can't I remember this person's name? I have no idea.
This is Asajj Ventress.
Ah, yeah, okay. That name sounds familiar.
And then this Jedi framed Ahsoka Tano for the bombing of the Jedi Temple and became an Inquisitor for a short period of time.
That's not Baylan Skoll, is it?
This is not. This is Barriss Offee.
Yeah, but who remembers Barriss Offee?
How dare you, Neil? We have some very passionate Barriss Offee fans out there in the Star Wars fandom.
Respect.
This final question will bring you to +2 if you win. So, like, I think this trivia was well balanced. At the end of the day.
I feel like I've won.
You've definitely won. Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the first original Star Wars novel, was written as a sequel to which Star Wars movie when the idea was abandoned in pre-production?
Which Star Wars movie when the idea was abandoned in pre-production?
So this book, they're like, this is going to be the next Star Wars, but in pre-production, George Lucas was like, nah.
Would it have been like an episode? Wait, what?
This novel was written as a sequel to which Star Wars movie?
Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, no, this is Star Wars, the first one. Star Wars: A New Hope.
Oh, okay.
The first original Star Wars novel. That was a confusing ass
question.
I mean, I guess, I don't know. Look, Neil, here's the thing.
Because he did make a sequel to that Star Wars movie.
He did, but just not based on Splinter of the Mind's Eye, the novel.
Okay. You made it sound like the movie was abandoned. I was like, they don't abandon. I mean, they abandoned them now. Plenty of them, but...
Splinter of the Mind's Eye has no Han Solo and Chewbacca in it, so basically they were like ready to deploy this if Harrison Ford was like, fuck no, I'm not doing that again. And then when Harrison Ford signed on, they're like, well, let's figure this out then. And it changed around.
This was almost the sequel to a Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm. But ended up just being the first novel.
I actually did not know this.
Well, Neil, after 4 weeks and several rounds of confusing trivia, the final score is Neil 1, guess 0.
Hell yeah.
After everything evens out. So congratulations. And let's continue our Andor adventure. All right, right, we are back to talk about the final 3 episodes of Andor Season 2. Make It Stop, Who Else Knows, Jedha, Kyber, Urso. That sounds like 8 episodes, but those are the 3 episode titles and the conclusion of Andor Season 2. They were all written by Alonso Ruiz Palacios and directed by Tom Bissell, whose game Extra Life, How Video Games Matter in Pop Culture, was a really important book for me to start taking video games seriously when I was in New York. I used to have like 0 video game systems, and I was one of those snobs that was like, I don't even have a working TV, derp derp.
Video games aren't art.
Exactly. I wasn't quite that thing. I was just more like, they're a different type of art form that I want to engage with. Like maybe we had a Sega Genesis towards the end of my tenure in that apartment, but reading Extra Life made me sort of re-engage and be able to argue why it would sort of be interesting. He then went on to write The Disaster Artist, based on the Tommy Wiseau movie The Room. I have never actually seen The Disaster Artist, the movie.
Oh, interesting.
The James Franco movie.
I saw it.
Yeah. I always heard good things, but I missed that particular book and movie. But he is not a stranger necessarily to writing sort of right here on the edge of the genre space. And I think he does a pretty good job bringing these 3 home as we are in BBY 1. Neil, do you remember what it was like watching these? Do you remember your initial reactions to these episodes before you?
I mean, this one is unique to me, I think, because of Make It Stop being just such a banger. This group of 3 just comes out swinging so hard. And I think that by the time you get to BBY1, it feels like we've got all of the pieces that we'll need to get us to Rogue One. Right now, K2SO is in the picture, and we've sort of got Cassian out on his own where we need him, and it's time for all of these pieces to come together. And then they do this thing where they're like, wait a minute. We've got a character-focused episode that's going to have a bunch of flashbacks that doesn't even reveal itself to be a flashback-centric episode until 20 minutes into the 50-minute episode.
Yeah.
And then we're hitting you with flashbacks. We're hitting you with Kleia's POV. We're hitting you with a recontextualization of this entire relationship that we've been watching through the over the course of the entire series of Andor between Kleya and Luthan. And I feel like you just feel like the show is going to another level right here at the end. And it's kind of amazing. So this was definitely my favorite batch of episodes. And because I think it has by far the best episode in it, in Make It Stop. So, I mean, I watched these for the most part in 2 batches when they aired. I didn't watch them week to week because I knew we weren't going to be covering them until after. So I was like, I'll watch them how I want to watch them. But when I was watching the second batch, I was like, it has taken a long time to get here. And Andor has accomplished so much by this point that it's like, I don't know how they're going to land this in a way that feels completely satisfying going into and connect it neatly to Rogue One, but they do it. They do it really well. Yeah. So, and I think it starts with just this big swing in episode, what is that, 10? Yeah, 10.
Yeah, Make It Stop is pretty intense, and I remember watching it. So I watched all of these. I was like the minute it dropped, I was just ready to plug in for my Star Wars for the night. So I was like, here we go. We're going to do it. Like after what happened on Gorman last week, like what sort of peak events can I see? And I was a little worried this was going to go the direction of an Ahsoka or a Kenobi. And I was like, what other stuff has been happening around the Star Wars universe that they could like bring in? Like, I know there's some characters, from Rebels that we have had cast since they appeared animated, but they would be around in this time period. Obviously, we have Alden Ehrenreich on another Disney Plus show right now. So, still obviously in the family. Han Solo would step in. I don't think they would do a de-aging of Harrison Ford for Andor, but it would be possible. Like, all these characters are in the soup. And if it was any other type of Star Wars series, like, it would do it. But I was so happy that it opened up and they're just like, what if Andor was actually about Luthan? And I'm like, this is smart because Rogue One is available. We have the sort of ending to Cassian's story if we don't have to deal with Cassian. So the fact that the first episode is all sort of about Luthan and Kleya and Dedra and moving the beginnings of the Death Star plot forward and is comfortable enough, or I guess secure enough in what it needs to be to just leave Cassian out of the entire episode, I was like, okay, I can plug into this.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like, I feel like the decision that they made with season 2 that I love, and this goes to your point about not, about resisting the urge to do any flashy cameos here at the end from bigger Star Wars characters, is this idea that we start the season with sort of broad scope where they're like building out the world. You know, we talked in those first couple episodes about how they built out the world of Andor really well, but it feels like they're narrowing as the season closes down to, we get these very intimate stories about these characters that we've been following. And it really does seem like the show is like, what is most valuable about the Andor experience are these characters. So we're going to see it through with every single one of them in these last 3 episodes. And I think that's what makes it deeply compelling television, is because it absolutely cares about finishing the stories of all these characters and then letting Cassian and K2 fly off at the end, because it's like, we know where that goes, you know, but it's like to be able to very intimately over the course of, you know, 3 episodes, close the book on all these characters we know we're not going to see anymore is great.
Yeah. And Luthan Rail, what a fantastic character. What I like the balance that we've landed on in Star Wars shows here, where like I think we're doing mostly makeup, quote unquote, de-aging on Stellan Skarsgård here. I haven't seen any behind the scenes that have talked about doing any sort of like light skin touch up. Then again, I also know the light skin touch up would be like the least expensive thing that is on display in these 3 episodes. So maybe they did something to make him look slightly younger.
Sure.
But just the
idea, it's all very subtle either way.
Yeah. A return to storytelling methods of telling us what time period we're in, not necessarily by this huge special effect. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the development of Kleya's character. And I really enjoy, I think, the showdown between Dedra and Luthan in his shop, where she finally catches Axis and just savors it a little bit too much to ultimately make it a successful mission. Because she can't help but like revel in the fact that she supposedly did it right this time, only for it to completely fall apart because she was a little too tunnel visioned.
Yeah, she gets caught monologuing.
Yeah, and then, you know, bless Lonnie.
Yeah, I mean I love, first of all, big Denise Goff fan, because she's the original Yennefer from The Witcher, Witcher 3. And the fact that she's the one who gets to say Death Star for the first time in this is pretty great. And in such an amazing scene with Ben Mendelsohn, but we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
But this moment with Luthan is great. And I like how her character has sort of, I don't know, she was, when Cyril was around up to last week, right? She, I think, was a far more relatable-ish character, right? We saw her as a more human character, and you know, because she was a full person. But now that is sort of stripped away, and she's just sort of left with her business as a fascist, she's far meaner. She's a much bigger asshole now. And I'm like, I like this. I like this turn. This is exactly sort of where a person like this would go if like, you know, they're in this machine and then they have to compound that with the grief of suddenly losing like the only person she actually cared about to this rebellion in her eyes. And so like I love that ultimately translates to her being a little bit too having a little bit too much bravado in this scene with Luthan and giving him time to, use that ancient knife to make his escape.
Yeah, man. Props to Luthan. I don't know.
Sure. Commitment to the cause. He's got to be number one on the list, right? I mean,
what can I stab myself in the heart with in this museum is like, what a way to go.
Yeah. I mean, everyone in this story sacrifices quite a bit, right? Cassian has a similar sacrifice ultimately. But Luthan, man, that's a tough way to go too. Like getting incinerated by the Death Star. I don't want to like compare what's the worst way to die, but like stabbing yourself in the gut and then dying slowly is really rough. But I think it illustrates how committed Luthan ultimately, even though he was a controversial figure in the movement, it seems.
Well, I think that's what the rest of the episodes are about. Like,
he never wavered,
Yeah. They have a very nice action clip cadence for the end of the episode, but in terms of what our last 3 episodes are about, it's sort of like the tribute to what Luthan sacrificed himself for to get these people in the cause, and then sort of pushing them out into Rogue One, where they're going to collide with Saw Gerrera and Jyn Erso. Yeah.
Well, and I love for Luthan's character too, I love the recontextualization of why he was part of the rebellion, right? It wasn't something, I mean, he maybe would have arrived there on his own, but it's his relationship with Kleya that seems to have been the real thing that drove him into the rebellion, right? Into being sort of a radical. Because what we learn about her is that like, she's actually the hardcore one, right? Like she's the badass. As it turns out, right? Like he was just this like scared soldier guy who's just, and ultimately like what we see of their early life is that he was just kind of a swindler, and he was just trying to make his way and keep them safe and keep them fed. And she's the one who wanted to actively fight back. So she's more responsible for the entire rebellion than anyone will ever give her credit for. And what I love about it is like we may have to do this in our wrap up episode, but think about who is the most competent spy of the rebellion. Like Kleya in one episode just comes out, and we already knew that she was very good at like keeping communications together, passing along information, deciphering information, organizing, all of the things that we've been watching Cassian do, for instance. But like to see her go out into this field situation, and it's like her against an entire battalion of stormtroopers and like the number one empirical officer that we've been following this entire time, and to see her just do her thing is awesome. Like very cool. I was like, this is great. Like I genuinely did not expect an episode like this, although I should have.
Yeah, I'm very excited with the stuff we got also from like Kleya's backstory. Mm-hmm. I think I talked about, I can't remember if it was in the Calmer Storm last week, but the capability of this show to use stormtroopers as actually scary again. Like when the masked ones show up, that they're basically there to like kill people. Mm-hmm. So the part of the flashback where, they have to walk by people being executed, I think is really interesting. And then of course, like commitment from Kleya to Luthan that is vaguely in the realm of the professional, but also at a cafe on Naboo, the home planet of Queen Amidala and Emperor Sheev Palpatine. It's just like a little Star Wars moment where that's where they could have screwed up and showed me Jar Jar Binks the clown, because he apparently is back there being a clown now, but they didn't. And instead, I think it adds a like super interesting intersection point, because we didn't spend enough time, I think, really on Naboo for how important it ended up being in the world's Skywalker history.
But instantly recognizable color palette for Naboo.
That looks like digital effects circa 2001.
Exactly. I did have a question, though, specifically about these flashbacks. So we find out that Luthan Rail's real last name is Lear. He's Sergeant Lear.
Yeah.
Does that mean that his real first name was Nethel? Did he just reverse his name? Is he Nethel Lear? And he turned it into Luthan Rail?
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
Nethel sounds like a Star Wars
Because he
name.
just reversed his last name, right? It's just backwards. So if he did that, but Nethel, I mean, that's kind of a Star Wars name, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Good old Nethel Lear.
Yeah.
I would guess maybe he would kept the last name, but I guess we don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's true. It's really interesting. But yeah, no, I love the flashbacks. I'm just super impressed with how long the episode goes on before revealing itself to be a flashback episode that is focused on these two characters, and we're not going to go do really anything. We're not going to call upon Cassian until this storyline resolves itself, and I think that's a really bold thing to do in your 10th of 12 episodes. So, yeah. I think this one's probably my favorite of the season. Also, classic cameo from E.T.'s grandma in the hospital, like the little alien lady.
Oh yeah.
I was like, is this E.T.'s grandmother?
Who knows? The ETs are technically...
This is what I'm saying. The ETs are technically in the Star Wars canon. She looks kind of like she's from that same planet.
I would like that if that's how we learned what the ETs look like at advanced age.
Yeah.
Is from one episode of Andor where we're trying to infiltrate a hospital to kill Luthan before he could be interrogated.
It's pretty great. Let me ask you this, Dave.
Yeah.
In the flashbacks where he first meets Kleya as a kid, they're like clearing out settlements. He's obviously like in the Imperial Army, right?
Imperial Army, yeah.
What is this part of an important part of Star Wars history, or is this like, do we know what this is that he's a part of?
We don't, and most of the names that we hear, the other soldiers and stuff, haven't popped up before, so it's hard to necessarily nail down exactly what.
So he's just part of some past tyranny that they were doing.
Yeah, he was part of a early Imperial, I guess, group that had been, I imagine at this point, conscripted to serve the Empire in whatever
area they were, genociding Kleya's planet.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, it's such an amazing layer to add to their story, which is like this original sin of like how they met is he was part of the group that destroyed her people, you know? So like that's always something that would be between them, no matter how close they are eventually. So it's kind of wild. It's very cool. Very cool. Also, cute animals in this one. I learned some things about the animals, Dave.
Yeah.
This animal that we meet in the scene where they discover the body of what's his name? Young. Lonnie, who unfortunately his services are no longer needed, and Luthan, which is it's kind of great putting it back to back like this, because initially it's kind of shitty that Luthan kills Lonnie, but then we see Luthan being willing to kill himself like immediately after, and it's like, well, he's pretty committed. But then we see this cute little cat dog thing, and these are apparently called Tuca cats.
Yes.
This one's name is Pix. I picked up, and I was like, is this related in any way to Nyx from Star Wars Outlaws? They are not. Nyx is a Mercal, which is different. But the Tuca cats are apparently a distant cousin to the Loth cats.
The Loth cats are just the hairy ones, right?
The Loth cats are the hairy ones. We've seen them in stuff like Rebels, apparently, and The Acolyte. I was like, where have I seen this before? Like recently, and it was in The Acolyte, a couple episodes there. So, Tuca cats.
So fun story. Tuca cats first appeared like in canon in Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And are named after Dave Filoni's old, now deceased cat, Took.
Nice. Dave Filoni.
But,
even Dave Filoni got in here into Andor.
Right here into Andor. Tuca cats are adorable. I haven't been to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but I am told they have like a sleeping one in one of the shops that I think would be fun to see. Let's sort of keep talking about these 3 episodes, obviously, but transition a little bit more into the middle episode.
Sure.
Because that's where Cassian and our other characters enter, as Kleya is able to sort of send a pulse signal out, and it's where Krennic and Dedra sort of have their face off, and we get the sort of explanation for, I think, the first time, really, about just like the chain of command of the Death Star plans. Mm-hmm. This has been a running joke for a long time. Not necessarily a running joke, but there are obviously 2 Death Stars in the original trilogy, Death Star 1 and Death Star 2. Death Star 1, we know that the plans are in R2-D2, and now we've expanded the lore to Rogue One, and now here in Andor, we know the complete sort of chain of command of those, how that secret leaked, which was Lonnie was attached to Dedra. Dedra got overzealous because with Cyril gone, she focused back on Axis. She
got caught being too much of a nerd.
Too much of a nerd. Well, she was getting reports from Scarif and Edu, both places we will visit in Rogue One because they are key to this energy project that turns out to be the Death Star. She was obviously on Gorman. She's the one who finds out the name Death Star, but also she's the one who is made the focus by Lonnie and Luthan so that Lonnie gets her credentials and is able to spend 2 hours searching her files, finds the Death Star, tells Luthan, who tells Kleya, who kills Luthan, who tells Cassian, who brings Kleya back to Yavin, who has to convince everybody this is true. And then they start getting a broadcast from Saul's connection because at this point, Saw has made contact with Bodhi Rook, defecting Imperial pilot, who is bringing the information that Galen Erso has also a backdoor. And I think those are the 2 streams that are coming together into Rogue One and how we make these. These are not the many Bothans died. That's what Mon Mothma says about the second Death Star plan. So we have yet to see the many Bothans died heist, maybe sometime in the future.
Sure. Hopefully Tony Gilroy is working on that. Show us what happened to those Bothans.
Why not? Set it between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
All those stars are super available, I'm sure.
But also, shout out to Dedra Meero, hero of the rebellion. Unknowing hero of the rebellion. For being, again, too competent for the Empire's own good, which I think is great. But also this scene with Ben Mendelsohn and Denise Goff is an all-timer, like an all-time Star Wars scene, because he's just so good. And I love there's the behind the scenes documentary thing that they've been releasing, the Declassified, where Ben Mendelsohn talks about this scene, and he's like, it's just when you put on that cape, you just know what to do. You just know where you're supposed to be emotionally. And I was like, that must be it for a lot of Star Wars people. Once you get the cape on, right? It's like once Donald Glover puts on the Lando cape, you just must slip right into it. But yeah, I love this. Is just like such a powerhouse sequence that delivers quite a bit of tying together exposition that is useful. And I kind of like that Dedra makes it, right? Because now we can pull strings. I mean, first of all, it gives them an opportunity to eventually show us the prison again, which is dark. But also, we could think about, like, would the Empire ever use her again in some way with her knowledge? Is she involved in Death Star 2? Did she kill some Bothans?
Did she kill some Bothans?
I mean, and like after the setback of Death Star 1, maybe they need some bodies for Death Star 2, and they bring her out of retirement.
This is also the episode where we jump in with K2SO and Cassian and Melchi playing domino cards or whatever.
I think they're playing Sabacc.
Sabacc.
I've watched it several times now, and I was trying to figure out what exactly they're playing. And given the time I spent in Star Wars Outlaws, I'm pretty sure they're playing Sabacc.
There's lots of variations of Sabacc, and that would be a good call. So let's say they're playing Sabacc.
They're talking about laying down pairs of 10s at the end, and I was like, that's Sabacc.
But I will ask you this. We talked a little bit last week about how there used to be a comic book about how K2SO and Cassian met, and how Tony Gilroy and friends overwrote that last week when it turns out he was reclaimed from the Gorman massacre.
Sure.
But we kind of just saw him wake up and ask them not to point the blaster in his direction. We otherwise rejoin here, and the gang's all here. It's like 3 days before Rogue One. Did Tony Gilroy need to overwrite the K2SO comic?
Well, let me ask you this. Have you read that comic?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. Do you know what is the story that he overwrote is my question.
There's a encounter, I believe, where several times they try to reprogram K2SO. This is my recollection from reading a summary of it a long time ago, but it's sort of like they take down percentages of his Imperial programming, so it's not like he's instantly good. It's like he and Cassian are on a mission. Cassian's kind of not sure if he could trust him or not.
Sure. Okay. I mean, they didn't entirely overwrite that. They just yada by most of what, because like I clocked this time through. I was like, they didn't really do any kind of explanation for how they reprogrammed K2. So it's like, if that's all that comic book was, they kind of didn't overwrite it, because they could have been doing that off screen while we're watching Kleya do her thing with Luthan, or, the way Cassian treats him, which is, matches the way he's sort of treating him in Rogue One up until the point where they're like, he's like saving their lives and shit, is with like skepticism and a bit of standoffishness. So like, I don't entirely think that's gone. So like, and also they didn't give us any answers that would conflict with that, which I think is kind of funny.
Well, I think we see him definitely get K2 from a different place. So I think the one thing that is overwritten is K2's from Gorman now.
Yeah. But they ultimately just show them switching him back on. They don't show any of the process of like what they wiped. Did they wipe anything? Did they just turn him back on and hope for the best? Like, it's pretty great. And, I don't care.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering if like, because there's always this question with Star Wars and like how much being like tied to canon is going to help you or not. That was the big question about when Disney just basically said we're not going to be tied to it. It's because it makes a bunch of those decisions for you, but it is weird to see this happen. And then also I read an interview with Tony Gilroy where he was justifying Make It Stop, where he's like, I really wanted to give Kleya's backstory, mostly because I didn't want to let anybody else give Kleya's backstory. And I was like, who hurt you? And I was like, oh, the K2SO Cassian comic hurt you. Just the fact that somebody else was going to get to do it hurt you. So you had to like get ahead of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Which makes some sense.
I don't mind not getting like a full explanation of K2SO. I also don't mind only getting this much K2SO, even though he is one of the absolute stars of the show in Rogue One. He's I think my favorite droid of all Star Wars. And he gets, I always talk about this when we watch shows, like who's getting the most impact per minute of screen time.
Yeah.
And yes, he shows up very late in Andor. On the scale of this entire show, he's showing up in like the last 5%. But he shows up with like 2 hours to go. He saves the real hero of the rebellion, Kleya, in spectacular form. And he is everything that you would want him to be. And it seems like, packing him into these last couple episodes probably saved them a bunch of money, despite the fact that this is a very expensive show. But I imagine he's one of the more expensive things about this show.
And he looks great.
And he looks
great in lots of different lighting, moving in and out of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that was the other thing that you would worry about, it being on like a quote unquote TV budget, if Disney was pulling budget away is like, maybe you get to this point and K2SO doesn't quite match how good he looked in Rogue One, but I don't think that's true. I think he looks just, it is incredibly seamless to go from the final scene of this show, K2SO, to meeting him in Rogue One. Like, what is it, 20, 30 minutes into the movie?
Mm-hmm. This is pretty great. But I do want to stop here or I guess stick with K2SO before we move on with sort of the Kleya and Rebellion stuff, because he does have a pretty excellent action scene at the beginning of the third episode you were referring to, where he goes to rescue Kleya and Melshi and Andor, and he sort of does it in a way that is a new Star Wars trope, I think, from like the Disney years, which I would say like the unstoppable force. Mm-hmm. So this begins in like Rogue One with the Gilroy reshoots to the Gareth Edwards sort of original shot Rogue One, with Darth Vader sort of cutting his way through the hallway as the Death Star plans are being handed to Rebel in front of them, and then finally onto the Tantive 4, where we start. Then in Mandalorian season 2, we had Moff Gideon and his Dark Troopers sort of holding Grogu and the Mandalorian and Bo-Katan and Cara Dune, who cares, hostage on the bridge of a ship, and Luke Skywalker just cuts his way through all these Dark Troopers after we've seen that they're basically the most imposing type of droid that has ever existed. And now we have K2, who very slowly and methodically, but definitively, makes his way through a bunch of ISB troopers, probably with like maybe second to Vader, but definitely the second most interesting visual, which is using the head of the ISB as a human shield as he walks down the final stretch. A
guy we really don't like.
Yeah.
At that point, especially.
We just get to see his dead eyes as he's shot several times in the chest.
It's pretty great. I mean, I guess I hadn't noticed that before, and I kind of wonder if it's one of two things. Either Tony Gilroy doesn't want his action sequences to go on very long. Like, he's like, I want to get to my talky stuff, which is what I'm good at. I want to get to the meat of the character work that we're doing. So like, let's just have one unstoppable force come in and end this shit real quick, and we'll do it in a fun way. Or he sees the silliness of this story world, where there are literally every once in a while someone comes along who's way overpowered, right? Like, it's like a video game where all of a sudden they introduce a character who's just 100 times stronger than everyone else on the battlefield. You know, K2SO is a good example. Literally any Jedi is a good example. Like, it's like they should wipe the floor with a squadron of human cops with guns. Yeah. So I can't tell if it's one or the other, but he's not wrong. Like, I feel like creators, writers, directors with slightly different sensibilities would want their action sequences to go on a little bit longer. Gareth Edwards, great example, would want to show you more of the fight. Right. But Tony Gilroy is like, let's get it done.
Well, also here on his show, the power chart has K2 at the top. Like, we don't mess with anybody who's more powerful than K2SO in this.
K2, yeah.
So I do like that they give it to him, and I do like
except
that
for like
finally
Luthan's ship, but it's kind of. But ships are a different story.
Also, I don't think we should talk about that, because if that ship existed, like, why go inside the Death Star at all in Return of the Jedi, right? If you have a Kyber. The ship was cool, and it was a cool moment, but it is one of those moments I don't like to think about too much because it breaks little Star Wars for me.
I guess you have to believe that the full working knowledge of where that ship is and how to pilot it died with Luthan. Like,
yes.
Like, Kleya was not hip to how to use that ship. Otherwise, I think she would have gone and gotten that ship.
Very true. So I guess the question is, if you had to rank them, the Darth Vader, the Luke Skywalker, the K2SO Unstoppable Force, who do you think did it better? By whatever metric you think better is.
Okay. I'm going to rate it on, like, who's got the most swag.
Okay.
Like, who's doing it with the most style. How would the kids say it now? Who's got the most aura in this moment? And I'm going to put K2 up top because listen, Vader's got plenty of aura. He's second. CGI de-aged Luke Skywalker has negative aura. And I will die on that hill forever. And Vader obviously has tons of aura in that scene, and it's a great scene. I will contend for all time. And I will always argue with someone who's like, "Oh, that scene's stupid." I'm like, "No, that scene's awesome." Like I'm sorry that it doesn't like make perfect logical sense for like him being there, or maybe he's never used his powers like that elsewhere in the Star Wars canon, but it looks awesome.
Yeah, no. I am going to put Darth Vader slightly above K2 because I do like K2's run. But like when I saw that Darth Vader scene for the first time, it clicked in my head so much because in the original trilogy, Darth Vader is very rarely actually mad. But like that first scene, his introduction scene, the Tantive 5, when he like holds the captain up by his neck, even though he has all these force powers, is the most pissed Darth Vader ever is.
Yeah.
And to know it's because he got that close and now he has to fucking get on another ship and deal with this shit is pretty great.
It's pretty great. But I will say
Darth
this.
Vader only in context.
The reason why K2 I put him above, recency bias a little bit, sure. But K2 also, we get more of it. Like it's a much more extended sequence. We get to see him messing not only with the people on the ground, but we get to see Anton Lesser's character like being completely cut off after he slams the guy on the communications board in the ship. It's like this slow burn of like, we know that once he gets up into that hallway, it's going to be hilarious. And then him using that dude, the dude who I think gets one of the better lines of this episode, the Who Else Knows episode, where he's like, at the beginning, they're looking at the security footage, and he's like, the attackers, I was told there were 3 of them. And they're like watching one woman just do this whole thing.
Yeah.
I think using him as a shield is pretty great. And then he has a pretty great line at the end, but we'll come back to that when we get to our awards.
We will. And then I guess with the remainder of this episode and sort of until we tip off and go directly into Rogue One is this sort of idea that Kleya doesn't like the Yavin group and the Yavin group does not like the Luthans. And we all need to come together and decide who's like wagging the dog here or not, which I get and I think is well acted, but I do feel a little hesitant because there's that line that Saw Gerrera has at one point where he's like, I keep hearing when I need help that like the rebellion's everywhere, but like now that I like try to do something, all of a sudden it's like a tiny fragile bird. So my question to you is, what has Luthan done that the Yavin 4 group thinks is too intense in this past year?
I mean, I do think that, and we've talked, we especially talked about this last week, where this show is, the reason why it feels so politically relevant to our world is because it's showing us accurate depictions of things like, not just like genocide, but, we talked about how it showed very accurate depictions of like how false flags work, last week. And this, I think, it's a brief look at it, but it is a really interesting look at how coalition building is very difficult, right? Yeah. So if you see the rebellion as this widespread coalition, Luthan is probably on the more extreme radical end, right? He will blow shit up for the rebellion, and he knows, he's ready to die for the rebellion, literally. And he also knows that action is going to be necessary in order for the rebellion to move forward. It's not all politics. It's not all diplomacy, as Mon Mothma would probably have it for the most part. Right. Or I
think it's Benjamin Bratt's
as definitely Bail Organa would have it, right?
Bail Organa's like, if more of you would have voted for Kamala Harris, we wouldn't have been in this mess to begin with.
Well, I think Bail Organa is hoping that like some space wizards are going to show up and help, or that the
he
Force
has
will
raised
will
one
a
half of
solution.
space wizard.
The Force will a solution for Bail. But Luthan he's on the more radical end of the spectrum, and he's been doing, I mean, he's the guy who, when he was talking to Cassian about Gorman, was like, if it burns, it'll burn bright. And that is a very radical thing to say, because we don't ultimately want to sacrifice the Gorman people. But he was also right. Right? Like, something bad happened to the Gorman people. It burned very brightly, and it has inspired the expansion of the rebellion. So I think this is, they maybe needed a little more time to show more of this, but I kind of like that it's in there because it speaks to really well into where Saw Gerrera is. Because I think in Rogue One, that's actually one of the more confusing things if you're not a cartoon viewer and you haven't spent any time with Saw Gerrera, which is like, why is he so paranoid, and why is he resistant to the other elements of the rebellion? I thought they were all on the same team, but it's like the rebellion is that's part of why it's very different from the Empire. The Empire is a fascistic, across the board, aesthetically the same, very rules-based organization. And the rebellion is just people coming together in different groups to have to fight against this monolith of the Empire. So I think that's, I like it. I think it's good.
Yeah. No, I definitely like it too. I like this sort of complexity.
Got to make friends with some weirdos if you're going to get it done.
Well, I also like how it serves as a bridge so that we know where everybody is as we kick off into what we know to be Rogue One. Mm-hmm. So, like, the fun thing is the Luthan group that's doing the heavy lifting here. Really, this 3-episode block is their big push. They're like, we have the info of the Death Star. Please let us go hunt it down. And ultimately, at the end, there's this radical group that's saying something's up, and there's Saw's partisans on Jeddah saying something's up, and 2 of those alarms going off at the same time is enough for them to be like, let's at least send Cassian to figure out what's going on.
Well, and again, just as he was right about Gorman being terrible, but also inspirational, the work that Luthan did all these years, when it all comes down to it, the ultimate result is what saves everyone. Right? Yeah. They get the Death Star information. They eventually get it to the little farm boy who can blow up the Death Star with Galen Erso's trapdoor. And it's literally the whole point of A New Hope is they use this information to destroy the Death Star. So, radical or not, Luthan, extremely important part of Cassian's very right when he stands up for Luthan. Against the more moderate elements of the rebellion. Everybody's a rebel, but some of them are less into the, blowing up a building part.
You're right. That's only the Saws and the Luthans.
Sure. Well, and Cassian and Bix, they're kind of into it.
Yes. I mean, either way, not Mon Mothma, who eventually becomes
That's just like a fun thing for a couple to do on a weekend, though. Blow up a building.
Well, that's what's nice about Mon Mothma and Leia and some other members of the rebellion that we don't really spend too much time with these 3 episodes, but some of them manage to keep their hands clean enough that when they overthrow the Empire, they're put in positions of power again. Mm-hmm. If Luthan and Saw made it through the war, there's no way that, like, Luthan is a senator of anywhere by the time the war is over.
I could see him still, like, if he were able to maintain his cover, still being in those high society circles. I mean, this assumes Mon Mothma is still like a senator, right? But like him being in those circles and living on Coruscant, for example. But like Saw Gerrera, I don't think Saw Gerrera would want to be a senator. I mean,
yeah, probably not.
He'd still want to be out on his own with his crew, doing
huffing his Rido. Let's give out some rewards and do some awards and do some corners. This week, if you like this, then try. Could be from a lot of different things. So I am going to suggest a movie that is based on a free book, but I would say movie first, then free book if you would like, called How to Blow Up a Pipeline. It is definitely about what the title is, and has some interesting questions about how complicit you should be in America's oil pipelines being made occasionally through land that maybe America shouldn't have at all, and if maybe a way to resist is by committing acts of vandalism or corporate espionage on not people but property, because property is something you can't do violence against. If that sounds weird to you, this movie will broach those topics, but also do it in what I would call like a Breaking Bad-like pace, but is also very similar to this week's sort of heist to get Kleya out, where there is a ticking clock on their plan and they have to improvise as things go wrong. It reminded me a lot of everything Kleya is doing, and just sort of like that righteous, rebellious tension hit up against some real world obstacles. But I would say How to Blow Up a Pipeline. I enjoyed it when it came out, but I think it's up on La Hulu if you guys want to check that out for yourselves.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mine this week, Dave, is actually sort of a swap with last week. So last week I recommended The Age of Shadows 2016, which I still heartily recommend. But I really should have saved that for this week. And I should have recommended this movie, Battleship Potemkin, for last week. Because it's a better example, especially there's a whole sequence involving a town square full of people being mowed down by fascists. And it's a 1925 movie by Sergei Eisenstein, which is about a crew of a battleship that rise up against a fascistic government. It's a Soviet, tyrannical Soviet movie. And in fact, here's a fun fact about Battleship Potemkin. You should see it. I think it's on Max, right? Yeah, it's on Max. It's also on like Canopy and Hoopla and all the free ones because it's very old, thus public domain. Is that when this movie first came out, this is part of like the whole like Red, I mean, it's like the 1920s, so it's like even before the Red Scare, but it was initially banned in the UK because they were worried that this movie would cause a working class uprising because it was so inspirational. And again, in the 1920s, people were like running away from the screen of like the general because they thought the train was going to come out of the screen. So like people were very deeply affected by moving pictures. So I highly recommend it. It's not as tied into this week as The Age of Shadows actually is, more about spycraft. But you know, watch Battleship Potemkin as well. I think it goes really well with, and I think we should mention the Battle of Algiers. We haven't mentioned that, right?
Battle of Algiers was my pick last week.
Oh, that was your pick last week. Never mind. I think
got
we had
the
some really good
revolutionary ones. Yeah, we got some good ones. Also, if you guys like podcasts and like Neil talking and I like this, we have a pretty good podcast on strike movies that we did for Trial by Content.
That's true.
That I would roll back and check that out. If you just want to talk about, this is probably more around the Indivisible.org sponsorship area, but I've been seeing a lot of chatter amongst some of the groups that I've seen about the steps that would need to be taken for like a general strike to resist this American government. And I do believe that starts with unions. So if you do want to check out some movies that maybe lift those up, make sure to search Trial by Content strike movies. It's pretty great.
Solidarity among the working class. We love to see it.
Absolutely. This week's world building, I already mentioned, I think most of these, but I just want to hit it. The Naboo bridge bomb, just great to see Naboo again. I'm glad it is doing okay. I am very sad because I believe Operation Cinder basically singes a lot of Naboo, and that happens after Return of the Jedi. That's neither here nor there. But here, Naboo looking great. Site for some Kleya Ascendant terrorism, and I'm all for that. And then we have the Imperial ISB raid on Coruscant. This is the raid on the safe house, which we've seen the safe house. That's sort of been like a rotating set for us since the second block of episodes. But this one, I think, does a pretty good job of sort of like the movie Dread 3D, of sort of like establishing these like very dreary blocks that have been made for groups of unwanted people and what happens when the police have to raid it. I think is pretty cool. Not cool and like we like it, but I think it's really good world building here, especially like where K2SO's parked and he could see the Imperial shuttle land. And then after they're all coming out with Kleya, you could see like a group of people gathering, sort of like pointing at the Imperial shuttle, like kind of gawking. And I'm like, I've seen this, but I've never seen it on Coruscant. Usually if we're on Coruscant, we're in fancy Coruscant. We talked about that a little bit last week. But I'm always happy to see non-fancy Coruscant too, because there's just so many people there. And then the Eternal Rebel conflict we talked about, where there's lots of other different pieces all trying to rebel as they see fit. And the thing that sort of brings them together are these Death Star plans. Or maybe the blowing up of Jeddah might be the thing that brings them together in Rogue One.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing, Dave.
Yeah.
The increase in quality in medical care in the Star Wars world. Because listen, I know that at this point, Luke and Leia, this is what, about 18, 20 years after they were born. At that point, Padme dies of a broken heart.
Yeah.
But here, we see the Empire keep Luthan alive with a pretty gnarly stab wound to the midsection for a long time. And presumably, had Kleya not done her thing, would have been able to keep him alive much longer. So, like, the quality of medical technology seems to have gone up in the world since the prequels, at least.
Well, I mean, I think it is a good amount of medical technology that the rebellion is just never going to have access to.
That's true. That's true.
Because, like, in, like, I don't know, 5 years...
Coruscant is like the New York City of this galaxy.
Yeah. Luke is, like, mauled by a Wampa on Hoth, and they're just like, throw him in the tank. So, like, you could get professional medical care, or they throw you in the tank. That seems to be the two sides of the Star Wars medical world building. But I do agree. The best hospital we've seen in Star Wars thus far. Even better than a medical frigate.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who was your BBY year number 1 MVP, Neil?
Well, I think I'm going to give it to Kleya. Because I did not... she's been a good character throughout the entire show. She's been a compelling part of what I thought was just the Luthan storyline. But in these final 3 episodes, they turn that on its head. And I realized that I've been watching the Kleya storyline the entire time. And I've been watching this story about how she was perhaps the linchpin of this entire operation. And how she was maybe the most important person, right? At one point, she's the only person that has the knowledge necessary to go and get the Death Star plans, right? Like if before she's able to get to Cassian and Willman, and before she's able to get her message out, if she is killed, that's it.
Yeah.
Like all that information goes away, and maybe Galen Erso gets a message out to the rebellion. Maybe they listen. Probably not. Without what she does, I think the rebellion does not arrive at being able to destroy the Death Star, or at least we don't get the events of Rogue One. So I was like, and that is not something I expected going into these final 3 episodes, right? She was an important character. She becomes this sort of essential piece of the entire lore, which I think is great. It's also a huge emotional arc here at the end, right? She has this wild situation where she goes to Yavin and she's like super sad about it. And she's this outcast, and she has this really lovely moment at the end with Vel, where it seems like she might be okay. She might be okay. I'm rooting for her, but she's the MVP.
What do you think Kleia's thoughts are when she has to line up to see them give gold medals to Luke and Han at the end of A New Hope?
I mean,
they're like, and they did it. They saved everyone. We did it. We're going to give them some medals.
Mm-hmm. She's like, you're welcome. Just in her head. She's like, you're welcome.
Just giving them a death stare.
Sure.
Luke's like, who's that lady? And they're like, oh, that's Kleya. We tell you about that sometime soon.
You know, she's been operating in the shadows this entire time. She's probably gotten used to not getting credit for her wins at this point. Obviously that's not going to change anytime soon, but my hope for her is that she gets to live in Cassian's house. on Yavin and gets to have a mostly good life because they eventually have to evacuate Yavin, right?
Yes.
Okay, but it's there for a while.
They change bases in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, but they have to evacuate because they learn it's on Yavin. And in the final moments of A New Hope, the Death Star is actually targeting Yavin. It's coming around the planet, and that's what our sort of countdown is. So Yavin isn't super safe after this, but they don't abandon it like immediately.
Sure. Yeah. So, listen, she may not get her name in the history books in bold text, but she is as important as any of those fools who got medals.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm going to give it to Luthan Real for basically the reasons that you said for Kleya, but right. I will give him the bonus point of, I think a lot of people, when they have a crisis of conscience, make it stop. They don't then sacrifice their entire life to making that change happen.
Yeah.
So Luthan's character and what I thought of him, whether he be like kind of noble or an asshole, was always going to depend on the ending that he himself was prophesizing, that, he had to burn his life. And so any ending of his was going to be bad. This one was pretty bad. Again, you got to stab yourself in the heart with an ancient dagger. But he did it. He did it. And he was part of the thing that eventually brought down the Empire just way, way back in the line. So I wanted to give him his MVP here.
Hell yeah.
But I think both of ours are the undisputed answer.
Regardless of how controversial he was within the rebellion, he was right in the end.
He was. All right, this is the time for us to title this movie, since they were released in about movie length 3-episode blocks. What if these were released as a movie? What would it be? Star Wars what? Neil, what have you picked this week?
Well, listen, this one would have been 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, for sure. And it would have been called Star Wars: The Everywhere Rebellion.
Ooh. I like it, but that is way too positive, Neil. Rebellion's not on Tatooine. I know for a fact.
I guess that's true.
I'm going to call it Secrets of the Empire.
Oh, all right.
Because that's what it is. That's what has come to pass. Although I think I titled last week's In the Shadows the Death Star. This could also be that.
Sure.
But I think this is more interesting in terms of it takes all of these things leaking at once. These 3 episodes give me a slightly better understanding of Krennic's character in Rogue One, where he's like, I'm so close. And Tarkin's like, you keep fucking up. And he's like, but I'm so goddamn close. And now I see why he was so close. And it kind of wasn't his fault because it's just all the leaks simultaneously hit when he's days away from being able to blow some stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
Good old Secrets of the Empire. But I haven't given up your Everywhere Rebellion. If you will allow me,
sure.
I will go first for the Dead Speak Best Line Award.
All right.
Which comes from Luthan. It is, the rebellion isn't here anymore. It's flown away. It's everywhere now. There's a whole galaxy out there waiting to disgust you. And he says this to Dedra Miro.
Got her ass.
Yeah, just what a way to kick off these final 4 episodes, because he knows that he doesn't believe this. He's like, those people can't organize shit. But he takes a stand to piss off Dedra, and I am into it.
Yep. And not entirely wrong, I guess.
No, not entirely wrong. I just don't think he has that faith.
That's true.
Like I don't think he has that faith in General Dodonna and Draven and all of them.
Sure.
Anyway.
But I think he has, I would say that Luthan goes out knowing that his people are still out there. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
And he has faith in them.
Neil, what's your best line award for these final 3 episodes?
Well, mine goes to the droid himself, number 1 droid in your hearts, K2SO, after he finishes his work upon the fascists. He says, Cassian, I've cleared a path. And it's just so nice to have Alan Tudyk back for this role. He's so fucking funny. He's just so perfect. He so perfectly inhabits K2SO's like the power of his presence, but also the naivete of him just being such a child.
Yeah.
Like he just says shit, right? Whatever comes into his mind. And he's just fantastic. It's a great way to end that scene. Because, if you're going to have a quick action scene, that's a little bit silly. Gotta have a good quip at the end.
Yeah. Do you know how many orders we've disobeyed? 17. And then but this is usually where I do like lore that is otherwise in this show. We've talked about it. This is all leading into A New Hope via Rogue One, two Star Wars movies that you should probably check out if you have the chance. And then I mentioned that Dedra was getting info about shipments from Edau and Scarif. Those are both planets we see for the first time in Rogue One, sort of created for this Death Star assembling plan outside of your usual Geonosis, which the prequel series gave us. But since we don't have Storm this week, because this is as much Andor that has existed and will ever exist, we have one more thing I think to talk about before I talk about this BBY in canon, which is the ending of this episode reveals that Bix and B2 Emo live, on in Mina Rao. And I think this is a good nod towards the fact that we're going to have to go through Rogue One, but we get to A New Hope. It is very hopeful. My question for you is, as a fan, do you want any more of this, or is that where we leave the Andor group?
I think this is enough. I mean, I'm very sad for B2 Emo. Like, especially watching this a second time all the way through. There's that scene, I think it's in like episode 2 or something, where B2 is asking about Cassian. And I'm like, oh, this is so fucking sad. He never sees Cassian again. He literally never sees him again. But, he seems to have ended in a kind of a happy place. So, it's not the worst thing. He gets to be with Bix. He will see Cassian in that child's face as the child grows up. But yeah, I think this is not only a really great place to end it, right? Because when we see Cassian and K2 fly off, we know that is toward a really fun but tragic adventure for both of them. So I like this for Bix. I don't care what happened. I mean, I wish that child well. I want to be clear. I hope the child grows up and has a great life.
You don't need to know what happens to that particular child.
I need to know what happens to Bix and Cassian. That child does not need to be canon important going forward. Because I know that this is a thing. We've all done it with our favorite story worlds, where it's like, oh, there's a child. Who does that child grow up to be? Is that child important? Does that child have a lightsaber? Does that child have force powers? Is that child an X-Wing pilot? Where is that child going to show up as a cameo in a future movie? Or is that child already in the sequel trilogy or some shit? I don't care. I don't really. I think that the nice thing about Andor, and this is one of the questions I think we should probably answer next week, but one of the questions that is simmering is, will we ever get another Star Wars show like this again? Will we ever see its like again, Andor? In the sense that it's like, it is a Star Wars project, movie or show, that is very specifically about the people that live in this world and the rebellion and how the rebellion operates, and not about the Force or the Jedi and the Sith and all the magic shit. And that is interested in telling human arcs in a long form way that is incredibly satisfying. And whether we do or not, I don't need them to be connected to Andor, because I think Andor exists on its own with Rogue One as this kind of miraculous project to make like a really full-fledged, like well thought out extended prequel to one of the most popular and greatest movies of all time, Star Wars, like the first Star Wars, right? Like, to me, this feels like now Tony Gilroy has been working for the better part of a decade, right? Ever since he came on to Rogue One to help them finish Rogue One, to tell this very complex holistic, I guess is the word I'm looking for, prequel to the original Star Wars. And it gets right up to, butts right up against it, obviously. So no, I don't think so. I mean, I would much rather have a similar creative team or parts of this creative team go off and tell me about the Bothans.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Bring back Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma and tell me a story that's set a couple years later, and let Bix have a good life on Mina Rao. Like, she's been through a lot, and let that kid be a normal kid. Like, not every character needs to have some huge thing to do in the greater canon.
I agree. I will say, however, that little child, by the time that the movie The Mandalorian and Grogu takes place, will be a very precocious 13 years old.
I mean, again, my desires aside, Disney's going to do it.
Yeah.
Disney's going to put another Andor somewhere in there. I mean, I think it's a good way for this story to wrap up, right? It's a hopeful note to end, even though Cassian's story ends very tragically. But, it's the dual role there, is that Disney can also call upon that at any time and be like, there's Andor's kid. Yeah.
I'd like for it not to happen, but you know what? I think both with like Star Wars and Marvel, I think we're in a world where it's going to happen.
Sure.
It doesn't have to happen in a movie. It doesn't have to happen in a TV show, but none of these characters disappear forever.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure somebody's already working on the book.
Well, maybe if they do the book,
Andor
it'll
Legacy.
piss off. Yeah, it'll piss off Tony Gilroy enough to come back. So we'll be like, oh, I get to tell this story. Are you kidding?
Exactly. I mean, I guess the worst thing I could summon into existence would be they do the movie about the second Death Star plans and the Bothans, and they're like, but what if Bix was there and she also dies, and then that kid's an orphan, and it's like, oh shit.
An orphan raised by the Dameron family.
That would also be a Star Wars thing.
It would be a Star Wars thing. Before we head out, I'm going to touch on some things that happened elsewhere in canon, because BBY1 is kind of important, but also it gives you an idea of sort of like the pieces of the rebellion sort of coming together here in BBY1. It isn't just these pieces we're dealing with in Andor. Specifically, Leia Organa at this point in this year rescues the Mon Cala king, Lee Char, from an Imperial prison on Strokal Prime. And with his dying words, he pledges the Mon Cala fleet to the rebellions. This is where we get the Profundity, the ship that Admiral Raddus will fly in Rogue One, is through the Mon Cala fleet. And the home one is from the Mon Cala fleet. I believe the medical frigate's from the Mon Cala fleet, but like a big get there from Leia in terms of getting the rebellion some actual fighting power. This is also the year where officially Bo-Katan gets the Darksaber. We talked about it a little bit last week, but Sabine Wren just gives the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, which ends up being a problem for her because you have to win it in battle. But have you ever heard of the Duchess laser weapon, Neil?
I don't think so.
This is a cool thing that the Empire invented in BBY1. It is a laser that targets Beskar Mando, Beskar armor. So Mandalorian armor that's made out of that special metal, and sort of like turns it into a weapon that vaporizes everything inside of it. So it uses the armor against the wearer. And Sabine and Bo-Katan have to destroy this Duchess in an arc of Star Wars Rebels, and they switch it to use against Stormtrooper armor and just melt a whole bunch of Stormtroopers. It's pretty fun. The Ghost Crew, so this is the crew at the center of Star Wars Rebels, destroys Thrawn's TIE Defender factory on Lothal, and Lothal is liberated.
Good news for the Lothcats.
Yeah, good news for the Lothcats. This is where the Ahsoka live action series picks up, is Sabine's living on a liberated Lothal, wondering if Ezra's going to come back. Because Ezra gets transported away with Grand Admiral Thrawn, but not before, in BBY1, Ezra discovers the world between worlds, Star Wars space that lets you step in and out of time, that we've seen in Star Wars Rebels and in Ahsoka. But sort of like the most mystic Star Wars gets also happens here in BBY1, which is a crazy thing. And we learned that Palpatine has been trying to access the world between worlds from a old Sith temple underneath the Jedi temple in Coruscant. So lots of things that are happening to distract our big players here, while Krennic tries to sneak down his leak of Death Star information.
Sure. And I would contend, even though all that sounds juicy, this is the more interesting story.
This is the more interesting story. All right. I think we did it. I think that is our final batch of episodes for Andor, but don't worry, we are not done with Andor yet. We will be back next week to wrap up the show in general. We're going to do some superlatives with the whole show in mind. And then the week after that, we have one more very special Star Wars special for you. So until then, I don't know, be excellent to each other, and maybe just take a second and thank Luthan Rail that we got to blow up the Death Star with our little twink farm boy.